blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day, whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom. This podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries and Support Podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Before we jump into this podcast, I would like to invite you to join this community to hear conversations with other cleft moms and advocates that will help you feel supported along your journey. All I want you to do is click on the follow or subscribe button. I love your support. It's incredible to see us all come together, and we're just getting started here. So I can't wait for you to go on this journey with me. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. If you are listening to this and you're a cleft mom and you want to share your story on the podcast, please feel free to email me at ourforeversmiles@gmail.com. I would love to hear your story. So yes, you can reach me there. This week, instead of doing like a recap of, how I'm feeling or what Giselle is up to, I wanted to share a post that I read in one of the Facebook groups. I won't share the person's name here, but the post really spoke to me in a way. I want to acknowledge and apologize before I start reading this because the person that posted it is referencing another post in her post, and I don't have any context for the post that she is referring to, but you should be able to understand the overall sentiment of her message once I finish reading it. So here it goes. There was a post recently that highlighted the perspective of a cleft-affected person, which I deeply value as a mom of a child with a cleft lip and gum notch. I have given a great deal of thought to the portion where this person commented on parents diminishing the experience as though it's not a big deal, normal, or even not difficult. For one, I personally have not seen that perspective from a parent in the year plus that I've been in this group. And two, it made me evaluate what I post and comment in this group and question if it is too positive and not sufficiently expressing just how challenging it is to be the parent in the situation, fully acknowledging that it absolutely pales in comparison to being the person who is cleft affected. Well, something happened today that made me want to share a piece of my truth, or rather my trauma. I'm moving my home at the moment, and I came across some NAM supplies while packing. I broke down crying. We are almost 7 months post-op, and the difficulty of the NAM process came flooding back to me instantly. Being on the other side of each step or each procedure can definitely give one the privilege of hindsight and positivity, which I think is good to share with those who have yet to get there. And I love how helpful this community is because we all know how beneficial support is and would have been when and if we had it. But that is not to say each of us are not significantly challenged and even traumatized by everything cleft entails. I fully acknowledge that many have so many more challenges than others. I'm going to end this novel with a photo. This is the face I saw multiple times per week when I taped my daughter and cleaned her NAM. It broke me every time, but I saw results and knew the value very early, so I stuck with it. What's my point? This is all so hard, and while many of us cheer each other on and emphasize an end result and what is possible, I just want to acknowledge the hurt that exists within the experience and the reality that not all make it through. I just hope the new parents and cleft affected people in this group keep persevering and staying hopeful and positive during such a tough experience. Whew. So, just reading that post, first off, it just gives me chills, and I'm trying not to cry, but it also just got me thinking about the best and most effective ways to get through hard times. And all I could think about was gratitude. So, just in search of someone who could help me speak to gratitude and the cleft journey, I found our guest today, Gina. Gina is a busy mom of 3, a former elementary school teacher. She is a wife to a NASA rocket scientist and cleft advocate. I found Gina, how I find most people, on IG, where she shares her daily life, the celebrating mama, which I love that name, so cute, in hopes of encouraging and inspiring and helping other busy women live a healthy lifestyle and celebrate every day. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you as well. So, I guess when just in thinking about that, the post that I shared, what are your initial thoughts about it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I hadn't seen that post and before. And so just hearing you read it, brought back so many feelings. I actually have my daughter's name right here with
Oh,
me.
wow.
I usually look at it before I do anything kind of clip related and kind of bring myself back to just remembering why I'm doing this, why I'm sharing our story so that I can give support to hopefully a scared mama or a mama who is tired or, in all the same journey that we're on right now. So, I think I really, it's thought hard about sharing our journey because it is, my daughter's story of her
Mm,
cleft. And it also is my story too, as a mother and a caretaker and now an advocate. And so I'm proud of that. And I really, really resonated with me what that mom said about how, it is so hard, but we can kind of do this together.
yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective, and that's largely the reason I started this podcast as well, is like, I'm not the person, right, that is the cleft affected person, but what can I do to sort of to honor her experience and to help other people that are going through this. And so it has been one of those things, like, I have had those feelings of like, am I overstepping, or is this the right thing to do? Or how much do I share? I remember one time, it's so this was, postpartum, you're a little, "Ooh," but
Mm.
but
A lot of you. Not a little. It's
so I was talking to one of my coworkers, and I was just sharing. It took me a while to actually even start sharing my story, but I was sharing something with her, and then after we got off our meeting, I immediately felt so much guilt, like that I shared my daughter's personal medical information, and she's like 3
yeah.
months, and I'm like, I'm all like,
Yeah.
what did I do that?
Yeah.
I felt like
I
that, but I don't feel like that anymore. I was just kind of in my feels, but it's
yeah. I think too with my daughter, she was born with a bilateral cleft lip and cleft palate. And, from she's 4 days old is when she got her NAM fitting.
mm,
And so we have been, on this for since she was born. And so she had taping and, those things with metal coming out. And so when I would bring her out in public, it was definitely with a visible difference. It's challenging. And same thing with sharing pictures. People are not used to seeing babies that have a cleft and, that are unrepaired and things like that. And so it definitely was, a thought of, do I want to share her, her first smile with the world? But that is how she was born and she is beautiful. And I wanted, other people to see what an unrepaired cleft looks like so that they can understand if they see another baby with a cleft or if they, see scars from someone who has a cleft, like just kind of knowing a little bit about her journey so that they can understand better. And it's been overwhelmingly positive, sharing with people and kind of, especially I missed my role of as a teacher educating, and now I've been able to kind of educate a little corner of the internet or a corner of my friendship circle, about clefts, and it definitely makes me feel empowered.
Yeah. Oh, so do people reach out to you on Instagram about, like, I guess people that aren't along this cleft journey are not even, I guess, like, cleft adjacent, right? Like, parents or
Yeah.
grandparents. Do people reach out to you with any type of questions about it?
Yeah, a lot of people do, which I really appreciate. And they are like, I get almost every day people saying, like, thank you for sharing. I had no idea. Like, and, I had a friend in junior high who had
Mhm.
a cleft, and I had no idea this is what they went through, So I think a lot of people who just come across our little page really appreciated learning about it. And yeah, I kind of had a community. I was sharing my life before Brianna's cleft. And so a lot of my friends who've been following and interacting with me and in my community for years, they were like really interested to go through the process with us.
Yeah.
So, and just learn for their own sake.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too, like, if you shared, so this is your youngest daughter that is cleft affected, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was gonna ask is, like, were you sharing about your other children's experiences before she was born? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So for years, I've been sharing my life and actually started out as a weight loss stage. I lost 9 pounds in 9 months and I wanted to like teach
Woo!
people how to do it. I guess so that how it kind of started postpartum with Amelia, my oldest. And so that was 6 years ago. And then I kind of got burnt out on social media. So I stopped altogether. And that was about 2 years ago. And then when I got Brianna's cleft diagnosis at our 20-week ultrasound, I knew that people share everything on Instagram. And I knew instantly, like in the parking lot of the diagnosis, like I'm going to go on Instagram again. I re-downloaded it. I hadn't had my phone in years. And I was like, I'm going to search cleft and see what comes up. And there was thousands of beautiful smiles and all these moms sharing like their experiences. And so I knew like, our doctors and stuff at the ultrasound, they were like, we don't know what's going on. Like, we don't know. We don't know. But I'm like, I bet these moms know. Like that they will share their story. And so I met a bunch of really great women on Instagram who were cleft moms. And then some of them even said there's a Facebook group
Mm.
that is, I had no idea because I really didn't go on Facebook. And so that showed me the Cliff Mom group on Facebook, which has been a really great, invaluable resource. So yeah, it was kind of brought me back to social media because I knew that there might be a chance that someone was sharing their cleft journey.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, I didn't share for a long time. I just kind of was watching other cleft moms. And then after she was born, I was like, I felt this urge to come back to social media and share my life again. And part of it was so that I could be that resource that those cleft moms were for me, for someone else. And that's why I'm so excited when someone DMs me that's like a future cleft mom or something, or a cleft mom, I guess. And like, you write back. And I'm like, I always write back. That's why I'm here, like to help, to like connect and to, make new friends and stuff like that. So, because I think people don't know. Sometimes people don't write back when you send them a DM, or whatever. So it's just nice to like, no, this is why I'm here. Like,
Yeah, I think it's,
um,
I mean, I don't know, I try not to be too controversial, but I think when people see, like, the number of followers you have, they just assume you're just so busy or something, or, like, they assume that you're just so, like, too busy, for the little people.
yeah. I mean, I'm here for every person. Like, well, I'm here. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think, it's the reason why you started, right? To be,
Yeah,
a
exactly.
resource, and why wouldn't you respond to help those, people that are desperate, like, so desperate? I think back just on my experience and just, like, even talking about it, like, in these conversations, I can feel it, like, well up in me, like, the way that feeling that I had when I first found out about her cleft, and so you mentioned, being at your scan. What was that experience like? How were you told? Who was with you?
Yeah. It was, my third pregnancy, and I had very boring pregnancies prior. So it was just like another scan. And I guess, I didn't really know that something could go like that you could find. I knew it was anatomy ultrasound, but I didn't realize, I guess, what we were walking into, even though
Yeah.
it was my third. And so my husband came with me. We had gotten back from Disneyland the day before. So we were like, so like what La La
Yeah.
Land anyway, what
Vacation high.
we just yeah. And it was the first time that we were like, we really want to have a surprise. We want to not find out the gender. The other two kids found out the gender. So we were like, we'll have a gender reveal that night with my whole family and they'll just write it on a little envelope. And so I did not know there would be another surprise or a few surprises, but besides the gender. But yeah, so we had such an amazing experience with our anatomy ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech just basically said, "Need to grab the doctor. Like I'm having a hard time finding her nose, and I'm having a hard time finding her chin." And so we were like, okay. So my husband and I were just like holding hands, praying. Like it was the longest few minutes for the doctor to come back in.
Oh, I'm so surprised they
And
even said that because usually the tech is
I
like,
know. Yeah. 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 And so the doctor came in right away and she was scanning. And she basically, I think the ultrasound tech was trying to like play it down. She's like, I just can't find it, but I'm sure like it, like, so the doctor came in and she's like, we don't know what's going on. There's a few things we do know. And so my daughter's bilateral cleft was so severe, and you could see it on the ultrasound because her premaxilla, which is the part of your nose that kind of connects to your upper lip, because it was so extended, it kind of threw off their measurements, and it made it look like her chin was so small that they were worried she wouldn't breathe like upon birth. And so they were like, we can fix the cleft, like that's gonna be okay, but we're so concerned about her chin and like her breathing. And so, they kind of gave us some options. My husband is a scientist and he is really into like all the data and wanting to know everything. And I'm kind of that way too. So we opted in to have the amnio later that day, but they literally were like, okay, we have a genetic counselor waiting for you. Like, let's go down the hall. So I like remember
what?
walking out of that room. Yeah.
All in
So
one
we're like
day?
walking. Yeah. Oh, this is like back to back to back. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, my parents have my kids and it's like going much longer than, so sure they know like something's wrong or whatever. But yeah, so we got to immediately speak with a genetic counselor who was great, but saying like there are 700, syndromes that are connected to clefts and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Like, so anyway, so it was just a lot of information thrown at us back to back. And then we had the amnio like an hour later. Brianna actually kicked out the needle and they were like, she's already a fighter. Like she's so strong. She does not want anything to do with that needle being near her. So they were, everyone was laughing and it ended up being fine. They got enough of the sample but yeah, we did like extensive genetic stuff then. And it was just like a whirlwind of a day. And we did the same cleft team that we used, the same hospital is where I got the ultrasound. So they were like, they had everything like, no problem. We'll set you up with I had to get a fetal MRI because of her chin. They were like, wanted to see more accurate measurements. So they were like, I'm so sorry. It's so long to like lay here for an hour. And I was like, I have no children. There's like a weighted blanket. It is warm in here. I get to play music I liked. I was like, it's great. So, yeah, they were able to identify that she would be able to breathe okay. We could actually see her swallowing in the fetal MRI. Well, it was such a great relief. But it was about a month of waiting for all the ultrasounds and all the genetic testing to find out like what was happening. And they were more concerned, which I didn't know, about bilateral clefts because I guess if a cleft or if any like anomaly passes over your midline, it can be indicative of other things going on. And so then just one side cleft. So, unilateral. So it was, we had a lot of scary information thrown at us. We had a doctor who was not a cleft doctor tell us, they're like, this is not a regular cleft. Like she will be on a feeding tube for a very long time. And like, she will never take a bottle. Like, I mean, we had very extreme stuff thrown at us, but none of it ended up being true. Like she has overcome all of it. So
Yeah.
I think it was, they try to give you as much information as possible, but you never really know, until your baby gets here. And she went home a day and a half after being born. We actually had a cleft mom deliver her, which was amazing. It was a random doctor on call that I'd never met. And she came in to deliver her. I was like, I'd met 3 doctors that day who were like supposedly going to deliver her. And then it was time. And she walked in and she's like, hi, like, I'm actually a cleft mom too. And, I know what you're going
Oh,
through. And
joy.
I know, and I'm like like I didn't cry much in labor, but I'm like, what? Like bawling, like, oh my gosh, like, cause I just had prayed so hard that the doctor and nurses who would see her right when she came out, that they would be like excited, like think she was beautiful and like just love her for how
Yeah.
she was, not be concerned about her cleft, just like embrace her
Mhm.
difference. And this mom definitely did, because her son had a cleft and he was older. And she said, he's had all his surgeries done here. He's had everything, he's in college now. Like, it was just an amazing
It's
experience to
reassuring
have.
for sure.
Where, yeah.
Yeah.
And the first thing I saw was like another cleft mom.
Yeah.
So
You said a couple things that I wanted to go back to. So the amnio testing that they did, what was that experience like? Because I just want to say, like, I was talking to another cleft mom the other day, and she had mentioned, like, I know it's so controversial for, like, moms to do genetic testing before because of the risk of, like, miscarrying and stuff. And
yeah.
she was just
Yeah.
talking about how, like, the data is not the same as it was before. The risks are much lower. And I was just
Yeah.
telling her,
Yeah.
like, I'm just so, like, I guess skittish. Like, I'm so, like, I don't know if I'd be able to handle it. So can you,
Oh
not
gosh. Well,
because of the
yeah.
miscarrying, it's because of me. You know what I mean? Like, the
Oh,
idea
really?
of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. And at first I was nervous, because I like the wives I'd heard, and like my mom had said, like, oh, it's the higher, and I don't think we would not have done it unless there was like I don't know. They were pretty convinced she had a syndrome
Mm.
from what the doctors were saying, which we like obviously would do anything we can to support her. So we just were all about like gathering information so that
Yes.
when she would hear that the doctors could help her immediately, especially because they were so concerned about her not being able to breathe at birth, and that she would need like immediate surgery and things like that. And so they were trying to like get all that lined up, and we're like, okay, well, we wanted more information.
Yeah.
They used to not, I guess, do the amnios with an ultrasound, like a guided with an ultrasound.
Mm.
They would kind of just do it without it. And so they were telling us that like this is new technology kind of thing, that we have multiple ways. There was multiple like doctors in there helping. And anytime it got like close, like Brianna trying to move the needle out and stuff, they stopped. And so it was really quick, and it didn't
Mm.
really hurt or anything. I don't know. It was, I guess I'm glad we did it, because I would have been more worried the whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I just knew not good on your body stress is either when you're pregnant. So I felt like either way, I wanted to know either way. Like, so
Were they
I don't
thinking
know.
that it was PRS? Was that one of the
Yeah, they weren't like super concerned about that. They were, I think, more concerned it was like trisomy 20 or trisomy 18, which I guess they were saying there's a few syndromes that are not compatible with life, and they were kind of concerned she had. And so they more wanted to like prepare us that she might
Yeah.
have a shorter life expectancy. So I think that was more what they were concerned about, because I think PRS is not as found as often with the cleft lip. Usually it's just the cleft
Yeah,
palate.
that's absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, I was the thing that
Small chin.
they thought that my daughter had. Yes, the with the small
Oh,
chin, that's what they associated with.
yeah.
And so they thought that Giselle, because Giselle is palate affected only, and
Yeah.
I guess she just has a small chin, but they were thinking that at first. So we did have to do we had to meet with a genetic counselor and all that so that they could, do all that testing on her. And that was probably one of the hardest appointments that I had. And so that's why I was so shocked that they did all this to you, like, so much,
Oh, yeah.
because
And in between, I'm like, let me just figure out Instagram. I know. I just wanted to know she was going to be okay. Like, I
yeah.
just wanted it just like, it was so hard, and I at the ultrasound, I just said, "Will my baby be okay? Like, will she make it to birth?" And they just were like, "We don't know
Yeah.
right now." And that was just so hard to hear because I'd never gone through anything like that with my other 2 pregnancies,
Mm.
and so it was definitely something that I think one thing I really wanna raise awareness about with clefts is that it is so random. And so, like, it is not genetic. Like, yes, it is sometimes genetic, but 80% of the time it is not genetic. It is not inherited. It is just random. And because, of course, I felt a lot of what did I do wrong,
Mhm.
especially at the table of the ultrasound, like what, caused this. And it's so frustrating when they just like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And finally, I switched to a more high risk doctor who would deliver at the children's hospital we're at. And he said to me something that really stuck with me as far as when I kept blaming myself about the clefts. He said, we deliver babies with clefts all the time. And he said, oftentimes he's like, I'll have twins and one twin has a cleft and the other twin doesn't.
Mhm.
He's like, the mom ate the same thing. She was around the same environment. She was drinking the same water. Like, and one twin just happens to have a cleft and the other one doesn't. So that made me click like, okay, this was not because I
Yeah.
did something or went there or, did any, I just was worried like maybe my air quality is not good. Like, I watching every little thing. What could I have done differently to prevent this? And, he just kept reminding me, you didn't do anything wrong. This has nothing to do. Even when we were talking to a geneticist, when she like our last appointment, they were saying, there's some new research showing, like, it could be how the baby's situated in the
Mhm.
womb when the face goes closed. Like, it's just so many different things that they're now finding out that really has, not not the cause of the mother,
Yeah.
and I think it gets confusing because there are certain things, activities that you can participate in that do raise your increase of having a cleft affected baby, like smoking or drug use or things like that. So I think people automatically assume that like if you have a baby with a cleft, something like that happen,
Yeah.
which is not.
Yeah, and I think that was, like, one of the most like, learning that I heard this in another conversation that I had, another episode, that your baby's chin could be stuck to their chest during while they're forming, and then they just pop up
Yeah.
later, and so that develops a smaller chin, and then it doesn't allow the
Yeah.
tongue to grow, so it doesn't allow the palate to it takes up all this space. I've also heard
Yeah.
just, like, the tongue being fused to the top for a little bit, and then that being a cause of it as well. And so
Yeah.
just thinking about all of those things are I don't know, I think, like, when we were doing our genetic testing, I was alone most of the time with my daughter, and because my fiancé had to go back to work, and so I remember that appointment just being so tough because she had been through several appointments at that point, and she was in the NICU and they had, these IV lines and they're just constantly like poking her, poking her, poking her, you know what I mean? And so we just got to that appointment and I was like gonna have like a meltdown. I'm like sitting in the lobby and it's a place where they're doing genetics. Like they're doing all these screenings. So you obviously see all of these other children with varying like, things going on. And there was a little baby, he was so cute and he looked like he may have been like a little person. So they're probably running some, screenings on him as well. And I'm just like looking around and it just all becomes like this whole like, oh my God, like what am I doing? And they take her to the back and it's just all like very sterile and they're like, okay, the one thing that I would say is that people are so kind. I did not realize how, like, kind and compassionate people were just in this field and then also just having my daughter, but she says, "Okay, mama, you can bring her around or whatever. We're gonna start and just, you can kinda support her over here." And I literally was like, "I'm sorry, I can't do it." And felt sad, and, like,
Oh,
now in hindsight, I feel so guilty because she was totally, like, taken aback. She's like, "What
oh,
can't you do?"
yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, "I just can't look, and I'm just so sorry, and, like, please just, be quick," and just, like,
Yeah.
but I had to, like, sit in a corner because I couldn't handle it, like, at that point, I was gonna have, like, a breakdown, and
Yeah.
they were quick, they were so, like, kind about it, and she's like, "It's totally fine," like, you know? and we were done. And it just as you mentioned, it was totally isolated, totally random. Her surgeon and our club team did think that she was gonna have PRS, but she ended up being cleared of that as well. So what did you discover with Brianna that she was it totally isolated as well?
Yeah, it was totally isolated. You were actually in a trial for the whole exome sequencing. So they took every single line of her code with mine and
Oh
my
wow.
husband. So that was kind of scary. They had warned us like which affects your life insurance policy if you don't have one and things like that. Like, because you will find out if you have anything in your DNA that, for
Mm-hmm.
breast cancer, things like that, early Alzheimer. Like they were telling us there was all these things that they would tell us about ourselves, like my husband and I. And I was like, I don't know if you want to go poking in there about what I have, but anyway, yeah. So all of us were isolated. Like there was nothing that they found in all three of us. So that was kind of their big sigh of relief. And again, we're glad we did it because for us, the more information, the better to be able to, you know, set us at ease a little bit. But yeah, so then even though her genetics passed before she was born, they still kind of wanted to monitor her for about 6 months just to make sure that nothing popped up, things like that. And they can always, you never know. They're always learning new things and
Yeah.
always finding new. So, but yeah, she's done really well and she's been just a miracle and so grateful to have her. And it definitely, I've heard, I'm not quite there yet, but I've heard that it gets easier after the first year. As far as like, because we had appointments for the NAM for the first 6 months and it's over an hour away for us. So we're trying, and a
Yeah.
lot of traffic and stress when he's a newborn, So we had her lip repair done around 6 months, which is for our team typical of what they do for a bilateral. They kind of let the bilateral cases grow a little bit more before they'll operate on it and on the lip. And so, yeah, and then we've worn her nasal stent for 6 months before her next palate repair, which will be at 11 months. So
Wow.
looking having that next surgery done and not having the daily maintenance. I just think I spend way more time on her self-care than I do on myself. Like
I was
we have pharmacy time. We have three times a day. She gets scar cream. Like we do 27 minutes of scar massage a day. Like, I don't know. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, I probably spend a little self-care on myself, not just on Brianna, but it's,
How how has she responded to the NAM? She's
you know, so it really helped her a lot. I'm like the biggest cheerleader of the name. It made such a difference for her because of how her gums were on the outside that flipped it naturally back into her mouth and, prevented one surgery for her, but also the stretching of the skin is really what causes the scarring. So the more you can like naturally flatten the skin down, the less scarring there is. And so we're hoping that it's like her two scars will be, less visible and not just for like the sake of appearance, but like it helps physically like move her mouth where it needs to be for teeth and things like that.
yeah.
So, um, I mean, it helped her eat too. So that was really helpful because it kind of gives you like a prosthetic roof of your mouth. So even though she doesn't have a palate, it kind of gave her that for, like the bottle to rest on. So it went much better than I thought it was going to. So
Yeah.
it was good.
A question actually, does it help reduce the amount of milk that comes out of their nose as well? Like does it completely block it?
Yeah, it completely, I mean, I have one right here I can show you, but yeah, it's large. So it goes the entire roof of her mouth. And each week they would kind of shave it as she
Oh,
would grow. And things like that. So yeah, it completely blocked. There's just like a little hole there. But yeah, it helps the milk not come out her nose. And now it actually closed it so much on its own before palate surgery that she really barely has any food come out of it, even though it's not repaired yet.
yeah. Wow, that's like awesome. And then she's probably just trained herself, right? Like to swallow better.
Yeah. And that's another thing that was really reassuring to me that I found out. They'll say sometimes parents might be nervous or like, feel uncomfortable if they see like food coming out of their baby's unrepaired cleft and things like that. But what our doctors and stuff have said is that's their anatomy. That's how they were born. They don't know any difference. It doesn't bother them. Like their cleft doesn't give them any pain as far as like day to day. Like obviously the surgery is painful in recovery, but I think I had a lot of people say, "Is she in pain?" Like because of how her cleft looks, and they assured me that she is not. It's just her anatomy. That's how she was born. So, that really, as a mom, you always want to make sure that your child isn't in pain when you can,
Yeah.
just there's you.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really gave me a lot of anxiety, I think, when she was first born. As you all know, if you've, listened to this podcast, I wasn't aware about my daughter's cleft until she was born because she's palate affected only. And so when we were feeding, all of her milk was coming out of her nose. And so that was like, and she's just a little baby, and she literally was sneezing, 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 sneezing. And I was like, this is like not going to work, and it's just nothing was going down, just sneezing it all out. And so, as you said, like that I don't know, like, oh, that did like make me feel awful that I can't imagine sneezing that much in 1 minute, and then also
Yeah, like
just not being able to get any food. But of course, we got it together, and it wasn't, as you said, it's the visual of it is way more intense than what they're actually experiencing. And so it is reassuring to hear that, they aren't in much pain. They're learning, and they learn so quick. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Once my daughter got the right bottle, it was like
yeah,
she learned in a few hours. It was like she struggled with the feed where we, tried to do it. And then by the next feed, she's like, I'm getting the hang of this thing, mama.
okay. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so what was your initial reaction when you first saw her? So of course you shared that in the room, you had lots of support. That's so beautiful and wonderful that you quote unquote lucked out in that way that your baby was
Yeah.
delivered by a cleft mom.
So before we went, our cleft team mailed us the three cleft bottles, and I'd also gotten a few from cleft moms on Facebook. And so my first thought when I saw her, besides that she's beautiful and everything, was like, I need to feed her. Like she's going to need to be hungry. Like she needs to eat, because with my other two is like immediate, like, okay, let's latch, like let's have this moment. And so I was thankful that I had watched a bunch of YouTube videos to learn how to use all three bottles, and I had them all washed and sterilized. And like, I kept saying like, where are the bottles? Like we need the bottles. Like, and they were like, like, we'll get to the bottles. But I was like, she needs to eat. And I was really grateful how our hospital handles it. They have the NICU team come, and they like will check out the baby for a few minutes, and all of a sudden I just kept seeing everybody leaving, and I was like, okay, that's a
Mm,
good sign. She's still staying. So they were able to like give her to me, and we had like this golden hour skin to skin or whatever. We did all that. So beautiful, because I really didn't think I was going to get to have that moment. And I was 100% like, whatever needs to happen, like the NICU team, can take her. But I also knew from talking to my doctors and other cleft moms that I could advocate for her to stay with me if I really felt like it wasn't immediate. She needs to go to the NICU. And so I had that plan, and I talked about it to the nurses ahead of time, and they all were like, okay, we noted that down. They'll come in the room so we don't take her away from you. So that was really nice to know like your rights, and to know like how to advocate for your baby. A lot of that I learned through the Cleft Mom group on Facebook, just
yes.
people saying like, ask, like say, like, do you think they could come to me instead of them automatically taking her away? And they were like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, I was like, well,
Well, that was
that's
easy.
like,
The guy was ready for a fight.
yeah, and things like that I learned that, I hope to be able to pass on to someone else. And just knowing like, okay, because what they had told us was if we gave birth to her during times of like not 9 to 5, which, babies come when they want to come, then there might not be like a speech, like an
Mhm.
SLP there, or like someone to help us, and people who had access to those bottles. So I was like, well, I'm making sure that I had them all and I brought them with me. Like it felt really good to have the control of like, I know how to use it. I know which one I want to use for second and third. Like I had it all down so that I could be her advocate. and not automatically go on a feeding tube, because especially with her cleft being so wide and so severe that they, you know, were concerned about.
Yeah.
And I was totally fine to be on a feeding tube. I'd already like learned all about feeding tubes, so that was our story. I felt comfortable with that as well. So, I just think learning how to advocate for your child
Yeah.
before they're even unfortunate. Like, I know a lot of baby, like, moms, like, they find out at birth that their child has a cleft, and so that's hard too. And like your story, like, I was talking to my husband, like, what would we have preferred, like, to have the bliss of not knowing for the whole rest of our 20 weeks? Because that was really hard, that time of, 20 weeks to birth, or being prepared. But
Yeah.
there's pros and cons to both.
Certainly. Like there's I go back and forth with that too because I felt like on one hand I'm similar to you. Like I want all of the information so that I can prepare and that I can be the best
Mhm.
advocate, right? So like I ha- I
Yeah.
know I know what to say and how to speak to this and I can challenge appropriately and because when she was born first, like now I can say it like nobody in the room knew what to do or what they were talking about. Of course, I gave birth to her. So we're in the United States. I'm in North Carolina. So at UNC, and so it's a huge hospital. I mean, it's they have a cleft team there, so they came, but we just weren't expecting it, and so I wasn't expecting it, and I'm a first time mom, and so it's
Yeah.
one of those things where I was just totally pushed into a whirlwind, having to learn so much information at one time, and of course the first thing that we do is go to Google and,
Yeah.
there are tons of resources there, but a lot of it is, some of it is useful and some of it is scary and it's all the things, right? And so I was I felt late to the game in that regard. Like I'm grateful, just like you mentioned, I'm grateful for the peace that I had during my pregnancy that I wasn't like worried. And I thought I was having like a healthy pregnancy, which I did, right? I
Right.
didn't know anything was wrong or I would have to deal with any of these things. But yeah, I there's some things that I am grateful for and then other things that I I wish I had knew or just been better prepared. And just speaking in terms of like being grateful and just gratitude, I've been, right, just jotting down some things that you have shared here. And one of the things that I noticed is just the way that you that you think about things and the way that you reframe things in your mind. And I don't know whether you do it intentionally or this is just like your personality, but even just speaking to like all of these exams and this testing that you had to do like right at your anatomy scan, I can't imagine how you're feeling in that moment, but you shared like, oh, I have like a warm blanket, like, or I
Yeah.
have quiet time here and just the like reframing of that or how Brianna has more self-care than you do and just framing
Yeah.
it as like self-care and just this idea that although things can be really really hard, just the way that you think about them can make a world of difference. And so that's long-winded, but I guess where does that come from and is it intentional or is that your personality or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. When I was in high school, my mom was diagnosed with late stage cancer, and it was very severe and really scary for a long time. And it was the same cancer my aunt had passed away from. So it was like hit really close to home. And from that time on, my parents really instilled in us, like, if you have your health, like, find things to be grateful for every day. Like, seemed like the world was falling apart when my mom was so sick, but we would still find little things to be grateful for. And we would like go around the table and talk about them every day. Like, what was our peak of our day? What was the pit of our day? Like, my parents just like really instilled that in me from like a young age. And then more so like in high school when we were, my mom was beating cancer. She's now like, I mean, like, I don't know, 15 years cancer
Oh,
free. Like, it's been amazing.
I'm so happy to hear that. Oh,
I've been ever, yeah. And
wow.
she is, here helping me with all my babies and stuff. But, so that really kind of changed my perspective on gratitude. And then in college, I was studying early childhood education and learning motivation, learning and development. Like, that was my whole career. And So I read a lot of books and I did research at University of Texas, where is where I went to school, about like positive thinking and for children and language and how you reframe things and thinking about your thinking and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of latched on to that where if I know and I saw how much it helps children,
Mm.
it has to help too. And it does. And so I started a daily gratitude practice, and then I've done it over the years lots of different ways. And sometimes it's just on the back of a sheet of paper. I just write out 3 things I'm grateful for every day. And my husband and I have kind of started doing it together, where in the mornings we call it like our power hour. We 2 hours up for a day, or sometimes it's a power 5 minutes. That's all we have. We'll write down his 3 things and I'll write down my 3 things. And sometimes I realize that's the only time that I like tell my husband like that I really appreciate something he's done, or like something funny that had happened with the kids that I was like so burnt out at the end of the day, the night before. I did not remember to tell him, but
Yeah.
I remembered. For me, I've been keeping those journals as kind of my like diary, my like way to remember my kids'
Mm.
childhood, in 3 sentences at a time, because I don't have time to like sit and, do a lot of journaling all the time, even though I would love to. But so I just kind of have found that like in the hardest times when they said, we don't know if your child will make it to birth, I would still find gratitude in the fact that like they were able to get me in for an amnio today. Like it has to be, I do it where the last 24 hours. So not like general things, like very small 1 sentence things that have happened in 24 hours that have just brought me joy, or something that I'm happy has happened. And sometimes they're really silly, but they make me laugh and they help. Sometimes, they're just the only things that I know that it's just helpful to look back on and to have that reminder that in every situation you can find the good in it. And a lot of times recently I have a lot of new cleft moms reaching out to me, and just the fact that I can say something to help ease their really hard time is always a gratitude for me. Like that I, met another cleft mom and was able to just, you know, talk with her and
Yeah.
just sit with her in her feet, you know. And a lot of people talk to me like, we haven't told our family, we haven't told our friends,
Mm.
I haven't, what do I do? So it's just like, but they know they can talk to me. And so that feels so good to be there. So I developed a journal and made it on Amazon, which I was super excited about. Just did the framework that I do every day, just in hopes that other people, because a lot of people say, well, I don't know what to do. So I like put an inspirational quote at the top, and then I have some prompts that are the same every day, which is really helpful. And it's research backed to do the same ones every day so that your brain starts to look for them during your day, and little like glimmers, think positive things that happen. And so now my kids are doing it, and they'll say, this is a gratitude, or this is a peak. My kids do that too throughout the day. So it kind of teaches them to be present and grateful in the moment, because especially if you're going to have to write 3 things, you are constantly searching for the good in your
Mm.
day.
Mm. Ah, that's
So
a good way. Yeah.
keep you accountable, and to really, and you get in the practice of it. And I do a mine now in like less than a minute. Like you get really fast at doing them because you're always thinking. And I always like can find more than 3, and sometimes when I get really overwhelmed in a moment, or just feeling kind of spiraling, I will just like sit down and say, what's something in this room that I can be grateful for right now? And sometimes it's hard, but it really, I mean, gratitude is one of the best and free and
Yeah.
easily accessible things that you can do, to help you. So I'm really a huge, couldn't say enough good things about it.
Yeah. Do you, as you mentioned that sometimes it is hard. Do you have those days where you kind of, I don't know, this is very rare for me, but I do have these days. I'm not perfect, right? Where I'm just like, there is nothing to be grateful for. I just want to be like,
Yeah.
so like, woe is me.
Yeah. Totally. And there's some days I skip it because I'm just like, I'm not doing it today.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not perfect. I don't do it every day. There's some days I'll forget it one day and 2 weeks have gone by and I'm like, oh no, I got to get back. Like, I feel the difference. Like, kind of when you like don't brush your teeth right away and you like feel the
Mm-hmm.
film. I was like, oh, I feel, because I'm so used to doing it, that I do feel the difference when I don't do it. Yeah. So I definitely have times like that, or it'll be like, I only raised my voice 3 times today. Like, that'll be my gratitude. Like, I'm gonna find something and I'm grateful for it, even if it's like, I only did this many times or, um,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, and sometimes, like, I'm grateful that we had leftovers for dinner because there was no way I was cooking. Like,
Mhm.
it's just stuff like that, like, little silly small things, but it's like, yeah, I am grateful that we had food in the fridge that I could throw at my kid or cereal. Like, "This is what you're eating for dinner." Like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
or I'm thankful for taking because I don't wanna cook, like, that's all you need, and once you start, you find all sorts of little things.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have the link in the podcast episode of where you can find Gina's gratitude journal online. You said it's on Amazon, right? Yeah. And you mentioned your other children. Like, how do you balance all of this? Like, you're truly a
Well,
superwoman, and
no, 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 it's one of those things where, like, when you have 1 kid, like, you slowly add kids on, so, like, when I had all consuming, like, "Oh my gosh, 1 child, this is so hard." At first, I thought it'd be really easy because I was used to teaching 25 kids all day. So, like, 25 kids, this is like, I did this for years. 1 kid, I can handle it. It's so much harder. This is like, this I didn't I've thought about going back to teaching so many times but, I do wanna be home with them while they're small and everything. So, I'm grateful for that. Yeah, it is hard. I'm very close to my parents and they live down the street. And so I do have a supportive community around me that I know not everyone is as fortunate, or has that privilege. So that is one thing that helps me a lot. I just also don't have too high of expectations of my days every day. I kind of try to keep it like, I'll try to do 2 or 3 things a day. One thing that I do is I will try to do one thing for myself every day. So, because I know if I don't intentionally set that, if this is what I'm doing for myself, it will never happen. And so, because you're right, like, watching 3 kids, basically full time is a lot. But I make sure that I say the only thing I'm gonna do is, like, I try to do 30 minutes of, like, joyful movement. Like, it doesn't have to be an exercise. It can be dancing around my kitchen, but just something to, like, move my body that helps my mental health the most, and I really need that. And so, a lot of times it'll be taking my kids out on a walk, and I just say, "Mama needs her 30 minutes, and then we'll go to the park, then we'll do all the things." I just keep throwing snacks at them, and then I can get my minutes that way. I run on a lot of snacks and, I have a lot of teaching things that I do with my kids, like transitions with music and things like that to keep the house running so that,
yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's just about, like, getting creative, right? And just yeah. I told myself too, I actually lost about 50 pounds postpartum, and I I had to it's a mental thing, right? Like, I had to tell myself every day, like, I this is what I wanna do, this is what's gonna make me feel better, right, about myself, and just I'll just have more energy and just in general, the things that I want. And I just told myself, like, if I don't have 30 minutes a day for myself, then something is wrong. Like, it's literally 30 minutes.
yeah.
I said, something is
Yes.
really
Yeah.
wrong with the way that we're running this household.
Well, yeah, sure. I
If
know.
I can't
And it yeah.
if I can't have 30 minutes, and so I said, I'm gonna commit 30 minutes to exercising per day. That's it. No more, no less. Because if I do any more, then I'm not gonna wanna do it the next day. Like me, myself, I'm just gonna be like, "Oh, that's this really hard thing." But if I say it's just 30 minutes, and every single day I'm like, "It's just 30 minutes. It's just 30 minutes."
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like how I've been able to change the behavior, or actually, actually do the behavior, right? And so I
Yeah.
love the way that when you mentioned that, I actually saw that on your Instagram that you do, you're on your 30-minute walk. And I think that a lot of people should at least try to adopt that. It may not work for everyone, but just the 30-minute of doing something for yourself, whether that is journaling or whether you do want to get back into exercise. I love that on Instagram that you always show up as your authentic self. Gina is such a beautiful woman. She sent me her pictures and I'm just so she
No,
is so beautiful. But there are days that she gets on Instagram and she just shows up as herself, like as a mom, and it's like, t-shirt
yeah,
on, and
always.
like
Yeah.
I
Always. There's
ab-
always formula because it's like she's a like, she's always figuring out her water or it's her formula. So it's, like, always on my shirt. Yeah, I purposely do that because I didn't see it on Instagram for years and years. Everyone, was, especially when it was more like, I don't know, like 2019. Everyone had the filters,
Mhm.
everyone looked perfect. I just was like, that's not me. And I purposely don't use filters because I don't want people to, I don't know, I just didn't want to like change how I looked. Like, this is just who I am. And I thought other people might need to see that to realize that they're not alone. And yeah, I show up every day just how I
Authentic
am.
and genuine,
Yeah.
and it really, like, seriously drew me in because one of the reasons why I started this podcast is I wanted people to see, like, real experiences, right? Like, true, authentic
Yeah.
experiences, and that it's just not like this face on, a poster saying, like, "Donate to X, charity," or things like
Yeah.
that, like and you should donate to these organizations when, in reality, this could happen to you. Right? It's not like a
Oh, I think
distant thing. And so that's
right.
why I find that admirable for you to share your experience in that authentic way. What do you think is something that you wish people knew about children with cleft?
There's so many things about children with spastic so many. I think that the thing that I wanted to know, and I think that I hope people know about my child and other cleft affected children, is that they can overcome anything and that it is their cleft will not limit them to anything. Like, they can overcome
Mm,
everything. And I think a lot of people get concerned about bullying,
mm,
especially with cleft lip. And, my daughter's missing part of her nose, like the tip. So, like, it does look, she's going to have to have more nose surgeries and things, and not until she's older. So, like, people will notice that she looks, a little different, her classmates and things. And I think that one thing that's given me peace and that I wish people would know is that, like, you can kind of help children, and my previous experience has helped with this, but like through like affirmations and having hard conversations with children, as far as like, we're not hard conversations, but talking to them like, tell me about your day. Like, let's really have a good relationship, because I think that everyone will go through things. All children are mean for all.
mm,
I mean, I saw it every day when I was teaching. It's terrible. Starts so young, way too young. I did a lot as a kid for being overweight, and it has something I've really had to overcome still to this day.
mm.
And it's still those voices I still hear in my head of bullies from a young age.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know to talk to people about that. I didn't know to tell my parents. I didn't know that like people would make fun of me for how I looked. And I can kind of now, because I'm preventatively knowing that this might happen with Brianna, like, I can help support her through this. And so I think all children will go through hard things.
Yeah.
And Colette is just one that we kind of found out that she'll go through, but I think I just wish that, all parents would talk to their
Mm.
kids about what are people saying to you at school, like talking about how everyone is unique, you are unique, and how special is that there's only one of you. Like, and I know my parents did that a little bit, and they did a good job with it, but the teachers weren't really talking about it back then, and
Mm-mm.
there wasn't as much like bullying attention. It is getting better now, but just like embracing and celebrating differences. And that's one of the reasons I chose the Celebrating Mama. Like, I want to celebrate how I am and celebrate how we all are different and we all are together better. And just think that, like, celebrating who you are. And I just wish that, as a society, we could, work on that. And I know there are a lot of really great organizations working on that, to kind of just change the narrative of like the beauty standards and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's something that, while I was really upset when I was pregnant that she would have this be part of her story for that, like, because kids are mean. And my sister's best friend actually was or is cleft affected in
Mm.
elementary school. And so I knew like a little girl who had a cleft and growing up. And I've actually reconnected with her, which is so fun to like, I found her on Facebook, like, my daughter has a cleft. And, you know, it's so we've been talking. I talked to her mom, like, who remembered us and things like that. But, my sister was really kind to her just because she was a nice girl. But
Yeah.
like, I remember like her having surgeries and things like that, and knowing that she was going through this. And so it's like, I hated that my daughter was going to have to go through surgeries, and but that everyone goes through stuff, and that this is just part of her stuff, and that we can be preventative as far as like getting her in therapy or getting her, or was kind of monitoring what people say about her at school and things like that. When I found out, I was like, that's it, I'm homeschooling. We are homeschooling her forever. And my husband was like, okay, hold on. Like, I was like, she's not going to be with those mean kids at school. Like, I was like on my 20, and my husband, when I'm ultrasound, he's like, let's just not make any big choices right now. But it's so you have to protect them forever, like all my children, but especially like if a child has a visible difference or any difference, you don't want to like
Yeah.
throw them to the wall. And it's, because I just remember how hard it was for me in school sometimes. So
Yeah, I just remember my 4th grade teacher, he was a cleft affected person, and I think back and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I hope that we were kind to him." Because, at that age,
oh
we're, like, borderline,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
bratty, but also immature and,
yeah.
like, also have innocent questions, but can also just be, like, total nightmares. But I think back to that and I'm like, "I hope that we were kind."
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, how can someone start a journey of gratitude? You talked a little bit about this with the journal, but how can
Yeah.
if they're not used to this, I guess, way of thinking, how can someone start?
Yeah. That's really good. And well, one of the best ways to start any new habit is to pair it with something you already do. So, for example, most people, moms, I don't know, will probably have coffee or tea or something in the morning. Like a lot of, people do that. And so for me, I started with pairing my coffee with my gratitude.
Mm,
So I would try to get up a little bit before my kids, even if it's just 5 minutes. So I had a few minutes of solitude in the morning before they're screaming at me on the monitor. And I that's how I started, was starting with coffee and gratitude and just enjoying the smell and taste of coffee while writing just 3 things down
mm,
that happened from the day before. And it was a good way for me to start out my day. Some people like to do it at night, but for me, I'm so tired at night. I feel like I can't really be super present or reflective. So in the morning is when I do my best thinking. And so I think you can, one easy way to start is get like a spiral notebook, like 99 cents. Just write the date at the top, write 1, 2, 3, and then just write 3 things then write the date. And then you'll be amazed how quickly, get yourself some fun pens. That's another fun thing to
mhm.
do. Some fun, nice music if you like, light a candle, like make it really, I do have like a whole list of a bunch of suggestions in my journal of ways that can help you. That was something I made it like, romanticize it, like make it a special moment for yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that was my only self care for the day, that 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or however many minutes I can have. And I would do it also with like a devotional book, or if you want to meditate or pray, like that's like another kind of way you can do it. But that's how it's really, you can just kind of make a decision. I'm going to start tomorrow. And I recommend the morning, just do that. And also like have an accountability buddy, maybe like tell a friend that you want to start it with them. You can text them your gratitude if you want. Sometimes I'll text it to my mom or sisters. That's always, nice to have someone who will, like, if they text you, then you text them. I mean, writing out 3 sentences, you look at your screen time on your phone, you see how much time you're on apps, you're on TikTok, whatever, like you have 3 minutes or less to write out, a gratitude practice. So I kind of, if I ever tell myself like, "Oh, I don't have time," I'm like, do I need to check my screen time? I have time. Oh, and I think it naturally for me, like, give it like a good 2 weeks to a month and then see how you feel, because it's not automatic, but you do start to, I don't know, feel better, I think.
Yeah.
It's research based too, or research, like put in chat GPT or in Google, like, why does gratitude make you feel better? And you'll see like the research, like I needed to do that for myself, to read all the articles about it, because then I'm like, okay, this is not just me thinking, it's making, it's really helping my brain,
Yeah.
stuff. So
I think, yeah, for those of us that are like that, because 'cause I'm motivated by, like, research too, like, anytime I
yeah,
want to know more about something, if I research it and then there's some proven research behind it, behind the habit or something, I will try it. I will at least give it a try. And so just in, like, closing, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned along your journey?
I think the biggest lesson is that I'm not alone in this. I have felt like meeting and reaching out with other people of the cleft community has been amazing. There are cleft walks. Like Smile Train does a cleft con. They do 2 cleft cons every year. The next one's in Houston in the summer, so I'm going to be there. So if you want to come, that's great. But like they have free resources. Like there's a feeding at the end of the month. There's always like classes that are all free. Like there's so many resources that I didn't know about that now that I'm in the part of the cleft community, that like I've been able to connect with people across the world and learn their stories, but also like find help
Yeah.
through different organizations. And so I think the greatest thing I've learned is that I'm not alone, that this is very common, and that everything happens for a reason, and I think this is something that I never thought would be part of my journey, but now that I'm so thankful that I can use it. Made me a stronger person. My family's been strong because of it. My marriage has been stronger. Like it's every part of our life has been, we found the positive in everything. And we're just grateful every day to be on this journey and to be able to share with others and meet others who are also on this journey and also on other journeys as well. Like there's a lot of like medical moms that I have connected with on Instagram that are not cleft affected, but they're fighting for equality and disability inclusion, things like that. And it's been amazing to see and hear their stories of all that they've overcome and that what they're doing to fight for their children.
Yeah.
Things like that. There's a million ways to become
Absolutely.
involved.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like that's fine. I was just saying there's a bill that they're trying to pass right now. And so I'm like calling my congressman, like my senator, like it's amazing. And like I did Harvard Model Congress in high school, and I was like, I really was like, I don't want to become a politician. And then I was like, oh, just kidding. But for a minute, I was like, I want to like pretend that I'm a congressman, and we went to Harvard and did this whole thing. But now I'm like, okay, I'm going to call these people, and I did. And so because in Texas and in a lot of other states, it's required for orthodontial or any care to be covered under it, even if it's medically necessary. And so like they can deny surgeries and things like that. And so there's the Ensuring Lasting Smiles bill trying to get passed. It's been trying to be passed for years through Congress that would just make insurance companies have to, cover important surgeries for our kids. And so, yeah, it felt good to be able to I am a citizen and I can call and write letters and things like that. So
Yeah.
everybody can get involved.
I'm actually thrilled because we will have some representatives for Elsa that will be on the podcast. I don't know when maybe after this episode or before this episode, but we'll probably time it for when it's time to go to the Hill, which I think is in July.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful that we're going to have people that come on the podcast that will speak to this so that we can get as many people as we can to advocate, to go to the Hill, or to do as you did, call your local congressman and all the people there. So yeah, but I just want to thank you so much, Gina, for your willingness to come on the podcast and also just to share your story here. I'm just so grateful in the spirit of gratitude, right?
Yeah.
To be able,
You're going to be on my gratitude. Spoiler alert, you'll be on my gratitude tomorrow morning. Don't worry. I was number one when we get to do this. So I'm really, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And just thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope that you have enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and gratitude and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.